Any more questions on this? Yes.
But surely the circumstances have changed now. Peaceful opposition has been made unlawful. What other way do the South Africans have, the black South Africans?
Well, everybody around the table condemns the measures which have just been taken, for the very reason you state, sir. But what people are not agreed is whether, around this table, and probably not in this audience, is whether sanctions would help to bring peace and democracy, or multiracial democracy, in South Africa. Now, can you answer that question?
Well, I would rather say, how can one avoid, perhaps, the seemingly inevitable slide into violence and violent upheaval there? What positive measures should we be thinking about now to avoid that situation?
What should we be thinking of?
Yes.
Well, I don't know.
Well, thank you for being honest.
Well, for example, there's one specific thing one could do which would have an immediate and dramatic effect, which would be to cut off airlines from South Africa. You could do that. That is not a trade boycott, but it would have a very immediate and very direct effect on the people in South Africa.
No South African airlines here, no British airlines there?
Correct, yes. There is an example, a specific example. Now, to pick up another point that you made or somebody made about the Japanese. Now, the Japanese would not, a country which depends so much as Japan does upon its external trade all over the world, and not by any means least in Black Africa, would certainly, I don't think, not be in any way anxious to imperil that. And the last point I make is in response to Michael Portillo, who says, how can we be sure that any measures we might take would produce a desired result? And of course, unfortunately, the answer is we cannot. But we must, I think, put pressure on the assumption that if external pressure is sufficient, it will lead to a re-evaluation by the South Africans of their position, which will lead to discussion and change. That is certainly what someone like me, and I'm sure the others, would wish.
Shirley Goodwin, what do you say?
Well, it just seems to me that unless we do keep up the pressure from outside, using everything that we can, including the sanctions such as we've heard described this evening, that the black people within South Africa may feel they've got absolutely nothing to lose by doing absolutely anything they feel driven to do, because they'll lose international support.
The young gentleman there claimed that the leader of the biggest group of black South Africans doesn't believe in sanctions, you see.
Well, that's not the impression I get, and I think I must, watch the same programmes, read the same newspapers. That's not the impression I get, that those people speak for the majority. Well, I've also been to other parts of Africa.
Come back and deal with that point,
He's
very interested.
He's stood up and said it. Chief Buthelezi is totally against sanctions, and so are the Inkatha movement and its members.
Well, I don't consider him to be representative of the people who are suffering most under the repressive regime.
They're the largest group of black South Africans. How can you say they're not representative?
Well, what about these other 17 groups? I mean, if they are not representative, why have they been suppressed?
So his point is, and I'm not joining him in his argument necessarily, his point is that Chief Buthelezi is the leader of the largest single group of black South Africans. Is this your point? Now, what about that? Do you accept that?
Well, Chief Buthelezi is the leader...
Do you accept that?
Well, I don't know whether it is the largest. It's certainly a substantial number of Africans. That's perfectly true. But the key point is that he is the leader of one of the homelands. He isn't independent. His power depends entirely on President Botha and the white South Africans. He is not in any way an indicator of genuine black South African opinion, any more than Bishop Muzorewa was when we came to Rhodesian independence. He was given power by the whites, and he was shown when we actually had an election that he hardly had any significant electoral support at all. And I suspect the same will happen to Buthelezi.
Let's have a show of hands by this not unrepresentative but not scientifically chosen audience. How many people here think that Britain should now plan or consider sanctions, economic sanctions against South Africa? That's, I would say, about 75%, 60% of the audience. How many not? Just do a check. Yes. About?
2 to 1.
Yes, about 60%. Well, that was interesting, not scientific, but interesting. Thank you very much. Very much indeed. We'll move to another question now, from Douglas McBean, who is an insurance broker. Mr. McBean.
In view of the election of a hard left candidate to the chairmanship of the Transport and General Workers Union,